everyone. Welcome back to another KiteCast episode. My name is Patrick Spencer, and I am the host for today's show. My colleague in crime, Tim Freestone, unfortunately isn't able to join us today. He's out shooting video for our SKO event coming up in another month or so. But we're in for a real treat. I'm very excited about today's show. It features an interview with Luigi Lenguito, the founder and CEO of BforeAI. Before founding the company back in 2018, Luigi served in executive roles at Quest Software and Dell for 18 years. We're going to dive into a little bit of that. Very, very few technologists stay at one company for 18 years. I made it 1 decade at Symantec. He speaks a bunch of different languages. We're going to only do this in English, obviously, and holds degrees from universities literally around the world. I was very impressed with your academic background and the fact that you have degrees from China and Paris and Brazil, and wow, very, very impressive. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Luigi, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Patrick. Really looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll explore some of these different adventures, also in light of the modern world we live in. So.
Well, you had a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit when you were back at Dell because you created this entrepreneurship program that was very, very successful. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But so I suspect that's what led you into your venture that started back in 2018 at BforeAI. What prompted it, and what is BforeAI? We'll talk a bit about, the leadership position you guys have. You're in the Gartner hype cycle. Twice, in fact, I believe.
But actually, let's start today, as we are recording, we just were named a cool vendor. So super happy.
Oh, that's great. That's the big
cool vendor in AI and Gen AI for banking and financial services. Only cybersecurity company among the 4 listed. So yeah, very proud. So listen, the inception a few years ago was really looking at the industry, seeing that there was all this detect and respond and assume breach kind of mantra that was starting to form. And to my kind of liking, it was going too much in that direction. And, nowadays we see that basically cybersecurity has become extremely reactive. And the problem with that for me is that, if you are in that victimhood mentality, then it's not a good place to be, right? You don't know what happened next. You're always under stress, and we know that burnout and turnover in security team is at all-time high. And for me, it's the direct consequence. And so the thought was, okay, I want to bring something new to the industry and rebalance. Of course, we're not going to stop doing detection and response. There will always be cases in which that is important, but it shouldn't be 100% of the case. Right? It cannot be the norm. And so we invested in building this predictive and preemptive technology to bring to bear preemptive security. And BforeAI is really all about this. It's all about identifying sources of cyber attacks weeks before the attack starts, blocking them before any victim is made. Nowadays, we have a median 3 weeks anticipation, up to 9 months for more sophisticated attack like ransomware and malware, as short as 6 hours for things that are more menial, like maybe fake websites and the likes. And more importantly, 90% of those attacks we shut down before any victim is made. We have an ability to do what we call preemptive takedown, together with a capability to disrupt the network so that there's no victim. Every day, an average of 20 million victims are prevented today, thanks to BforeAI. This is growing, of course, as more customers come into asking our services. So really, an interesting set of technologies in the prediction, and we can talk about all the predictive AI that we use, combined with automation and business rules to do this preemptive blocking, and work with a lot of partners to enable it, resulting in deterrence. And there's an interesting phenomena that we are seeing nowadays, where our earlier customers that are with us since a couple of years are actually seeing a number of attacks against their premises reducing over time. And our theory is that is because we are blocking the attacks before any victim is made. You can see the criminals investing in their infrastructures, in their campaigns, in their effort, time, money, and then getting nothing out of it. As we know, economical crime is very ROI orientated. So we're basically skyrocketing the cost for them because there is no no return on investment. And so, it's a little bit like the tale of the bear and the two friends. You don't need to outrun your friend. You need the bear. You need to outrun your friend, right? And so in this case, I think criminals are basically moving to other targets that they find more approachable versus
Are
our
they talking
customer.
to each other so they know that a criminal gang in China they attempted
We
to breach a particular company and they spent 6 months creating an attack methodology and so forth. Someone in
we
Russia
think
knows
so.
that that's
We
the
have
case.
some of our customers have reported that they have seen some messages on dark web anecdotally, highlight, basically indicating what you're saying. Of course, I'm searching, strongly to find those messages because we want to put it. We don't do dark web or deep web analysis, but I love to find one of these to put it on a billboard, right? The criminals say don't attack that company because
Yeah.
it's too well protected. I think that definitely, is kind of the growl for us.
Huh. So you started the company back in 2018. This was before all AI was a topic of conversation, obviously, but not like it is today, particularly after the big launch in was it November
Hmm.
2021, right after Thanksgiving, right? So
Yep.
you were doing AI before AI was really a big deal, and now you're probably, you had both feet in the water back then. Now you're all the way in, I suspect. Talk about what that process has looked like.
Yeah, I think first of all, AI is not new, right? It's been around for like 30 years. I think what is new is generative AI and all the attention, right? And often people, especially the one that don't have, a lot of experience, kind of conflate the two, and like they were the same thing. In reality, is not, right? In our case, for example, we do not use generative AI. We use predictive AI. Now, the anecdote is before AI actually is before attack intelligence. You need a bit of luck in entrepreneurship as well, right? So we choose this name well before, but we were before AI, technically speaking. But so the what happened is that as I had this idea that I wanted to rebalance the cybersecurity world to a more proactive one from a fully reactive. I started to search around, and I was lucky to be involved in a program from a university where they had a number of patents and they were searching entrepreneurs to bring them to market as a research to startup program. And I found this technology. And when I saw it, I kind of got this flashback to many years earlier when I was selling network firewalls. And customers were always telling me how they felt like they were slow and late. And one customer specifically sent me to the movies, say, Luigi, you really need to go watch this movie from Steven Spielberg with Tom
Hmm.
Cruise, Minority Report. You will love it.
Hmm.
And I'm sure people in the audience will remember the three mutant in the pool, and Agatha that could see the future of crime, and the pre-crime police that would jump in the scene to block criminals before crime was made, right?
Yep.
And I remember thinking, well, I'm not sure about the mutant, but the idea is very cool. And the time big data and predictive analytics, we're probably talking, like 2003, 2004, something like that, were kind of the buzzword, right? And my thought was one day someone will take all this data from internet routers and logs in Windows and Linux and mash it up with predictive analytics and figure out the behavior of the criminal and block them.
Hmm.
And so now I'm
Hmm.
this research program, and they're explaining me their data pipeline, behavioral predictive analytics, and all these other cool technologies. And I said, this is pre-crime. We need to bring it to market. Thankfully, 20th Century Fox did not trademark the name pre-crime, so we did it. So we own the trademark globally for pre-crime is the name of our products, pre-crime intelligence and pre-crime brand defense.
Interesting.
And
Hmm.
that's what we do, right? So we identify the attacks and we stop them before the crime happens.
Hmm. Wow. So you're getting all this intelligence from partners that you have, your customers, a combination. Where's all your
No,
intelligence
yeah,
come from?
the way the system works at a high level is very similar to a weather forecast system. We
Hmm.
observe the whole internet at a network layer. We collect all the information about routing, about naming, about addressing, about movement between the clouds. And then the system, through machine learning, convert this in behaviors of infrastructure. So we monitor more than 2 billion infrastructure a day to see how their behavior change. And then we train the system to recognize malicious behavior from benign behavior. And we do that by giving examples. So it's not signature based, it's based on giving example of other known good and known bad infrastructure.
Hmm.
And then the system with this data that keep getting collected 6 times every hour a snapshot of the whole internet metadata, basically identify network changes or behavioral changes that show that that infrastructure is getting closer to a known bad behavior. And when it's close enough, that's where we signal what we call the pre-crime score.
And that notifies the network that it needs to take proactive activity based on that intelligence. Good.
Yeah, so what happened is we have two products. So the first product is a pure attack intelligence. So there is an API, the customer connect their security ecosystem, so firewall, anti-phishing filter, DNS resolver, CM, web application filters, and so on. And indeed, they receive our prediction machine to machine, and they configure preemptive blocking, right? So they will stop any communication toward those infrastructure that we indicate will become malicious later on. So by blocking communication, of course, there cannot be infiltration, exfiltration, command and control communication, and so on. So this is really a network security product. It's meant to protect our customer infrastructures. And then we have another product where instead we focus on impersonation. So we are looking for all those infrastructures that prepare either a phishing attack, credential stealing attack, account takeover. In this case, not only we provide the notification to the customer before the attack starts, so that they can get prepared. Maybe they notify their client services, or maybe they put information in their app or whatever. But we actually can block the attack at an internet scale. We collaborate with companies like Google Safe Browsing, VirusTotal, Code9 DNS, many other partners. We share with them those indicators. They block it to protect their own users, but their user represent about 75% of the internet traffic. So in less than 5 minutes, 75% of the internet traffic does not go toward that malicious destination anymore. So we isolate it. We don't touch it. We just help everybody stay away from them. Concurrently, we initiate this preemptive takedown where we share the same data with registrar, registry, cloud hoster, hosters, CDNs, certs, CSerts, the entire stack of the infrastructure support. And we show them that their customer is basically abusing of their service, so they should shut down that infrastructure. Nowadays, about 88% of our takedowns are completed before any content is loaded on the infrastructure. So not only we were blocking it, days before the attack started, we now shut it down even before content is loaded. So to the earlier point, the true pre-crime, truly avoiding the criminals to get any return from their work.
Interesting. So phishing's a big issue, as you know. It's often, the employees who fall prey to social engineering. Some of these are really good. I got one from Norton purportedly the other day. You would have thought it was from Norton. It wasn't, but it looked like it.
Yep.
Which is kind of ironic. They're using the cybersecurity companies for their phishing attacks. How do you work with the employees within the company? You shut down network traffic, but they're not going to see those emails because that those
Correct.
are malicious, and that's how they're being stopped. Yeah.
Correctly. Yeah, the filters will avoid them to come into their inbox in the first place, right? So, and I think nowadays you need to have a multi-layered approach. So you would have content-based analysis that most of these phishing filters are able to do, also using GenAI. There are fantastic companies in that sector, but you still will have false negatives that comes up because, of course, criminals tend to craft their work pretty well. So that's where we generally get introduced in anti-phishing filters to reduce the false negatives of other solution, and that generally are the more sophisticated, the more risky as well, right? Especially in the financial sector. I'm very much of the idea that you can train people as much as you like. Actually, if you take the most trained people in the world, airline pilot, they're still the number one cause for airplane crash. So, yes, you have to do awareness, but the solution is in the system, not in the people. And so, of course, people have to be there, and you want to have the human firewall in place. But if there is one thing that we can forecast without needing of AI or anything like that, is that electronic crime will continue to grow, that sophistication of these attacks will continue to grow. As an example, we've seen our prediction grow by 400% in the last 9 months. So, and this is coming now, right? So because we are months in advance. And so that sophistication, that variety, velocity, and complexity of those attacks require machines, right? Only machine will fight against machine, but machines that are obviously created by humans and that are orchestrated by humans. So that's where we see us. We see us as augmenting the ability of security teams, removing the menial administrative work from them through automation so that they can concentrate in helping us train the system for identifying faster and better those future attacks.
Interesting. How do you envision, you talk about faster and machines, quantum computing, you have the issue where rogue nation states and some of the cyber gangs are gathering all this information. They're not doing anything with it yet because they don't have quantum computing where they can break those algorithms and so forth. Is there a play for you there on that front? Because some of this is not going to happen for 5 years, maybe 10 years out, depending on who you talk to, and what technology is required. But once quantum computing becomes more and more prevalent and more advanced, these criminal gangs, nation states, they anticipate they're going to be able to break these algorithms. What's happening on that front, and do you have a play there as well?
Well, I think we have a play more in avoiding leaks on the first place because obviously you don't want to have data exfiltration and the likes. I'm not an expert in quantum, but one thing that I look is I have a set of floppy disk at home. It tells you how old I am with computer, and I don't have a reader for this floppy disk anymore, right? So the data in there is useless. And there are some nice games from my MS-DOS times that I miss. But what I mean by that is that I think, sure, there is some very secret information that will still be valid 20, 30 years from now, but the vast majority of things will be superseded, especially at the speed of today. So I'm not sure if it is overestimating the how fast we will get to quantum capabilities, because at the moment it's still very far away, to your point, and even the 10 years seems to me quite optimistic given where we are, or we are overestimating the value of certain this information, right? So the good news is there is a lot of people that are focusing on it. They're very smart. They have a lot of funding, and I trust that they'll get something sorted. We for now we sort the problems that exist today just a few weeks in advance, so that there are no victims. It's important. Again, cybersecurity is a very, very vast set of problems, and not a single solution solve for everything. So we need to continue build these layers of different capabilities and make sure that they work in coordination and they're not too complicated to manage and to deploy, but ultimately make the life of the criminals more and more miserable, basically.
Makes a lot of sense. The protection of corporate secrets, private information, protected health information, financial documents, and so forth, is becoming more and more complex with the introduction of the supply chain, right? Software supply chain, third parties. The number of third parties an average organization deals with is in the thousands, literally, based on our research, probably the research you've read as well. How do you deal with all of those, right? Because you can sell your solution to ABC Corp, but they may do business with 1,000 different entities that may have varying cybersecurity controls, and only a handful of them may rely on BforeAI. How do you help protect that supply chain scenario, or is that on the horizon?
Yeah. So I think first of all, you are absolutely right. Complex supply chain, that being within the software products or within the operation and the business of a company, are definitely where criminals are spending more time, right? Mostly because large sophisticated companies have matured their cybersecurity programs to a certain level where their supplier are now much easier to be victim of cyber attacks, and then have a conduit that is a trusted conduit within the larger corporation. And so at the same time, this is very complicated to assess and measure. It's definitely, every time I speak with CISO, one of their top kind of issues. From our perspective, we contribute in different ways. Again, we are not the single solution for every problem. Likewise, we cannot predict every possible attack in the world. Despite the company started in Montpellier, that is the city of Nostradamus, we don't have the book with every possible prediction in the world. But in third party, what we do, two things. We have customers that ask us to filter our prediction on the basis of the impersonation of their partners for business email compromise, for, again, trusted infrastructures that may be working on their interfaces that are being replicated, if you want, by criminals. And so what we can provide there is a customized feed that then they can use in the relevant security control for filtering. Maybe the mail filter is optimized against impersonation from the third parties, right? The banks, the air conditioning, suppliers, and things like that. The second thing, we have actually other customers, especially in the banking sector, where they have B2B relationship with their own customers, and they see their customer as a risk. Right? Somebody that get impersonated and asked to move money from one account to another. In certain part of the world, the responsibility for such mistakes is actually on the bank, or at least 50-50. And so there is actually cost of fraud that materialize. If anything, also problem for AML or anti-money laundering and KYC, know your customer, because this money then goes obviously on money mule accounts where it goes to fund terrorism and all sorts of other crap, right? So what they do, these customers of ours, they actually buy BforeAI for their own customers, so that they provide as part of their service value proposition an additional cyber layer, so that their customer now get protected by us, and indirectly they're getting protected, right? So there are various approaches. The critical element in all of this is always identify your risk, prioritize them, and make sure that you have a systemic solution to mitigate that risk, and ideally avoiding it completely with prediction and preemption, but otherwise with mitigation like detect and respond.
What there's a lot of discussion around the compliance regulations, security. There's a lot of different standards, ISO. On the defense industrial base, we have CMMC. Kiteworks has seen a lot of business on that front. Obviously, you see regulations, improving security, number one, but moreover, do you see some of those regulations beginning to factor in, the predictive modeling where you can prevent, and you need to have those controls in place, just not the reactive controls, the controls to ensure they can't get in the house, but you're actually trying to predict, attacks before they happen.
It's more than me that obviously have a very biased approach to these, and being challenging, for example, MITRE saying, you don't have a predict colony your attack or defend. There should be one. But interestingly, this very week, National Science Foundation put out a request for information to various agencies for where research funding should be orientated in cybersecurity space. And MITRE actually responded to the RFI, and one of the things that they suggest to focus on is predictive and preemptive use of AI for cyber attacks. And you read it, it looks like they've done a copy paste from our website, but I'm not going to claim any royalties or any trademark on that. I'm very happy with it. But I think we have seen it first in the defense sector, where an active defense approach has been kind of live or in the works for many years. Iron Dome in Israel is a fantastic example of a solution. This active defense is there waiting. The moment that the rocket starts, they destroy it in the air, right, protecting people in Tel Aviv. What we saw with the beginning of the war in Ukraine, right, where U.S. disclosed a lot of threat intelligence about the positioning of the troops from Russians to try and kind of deter them. Unfortunately, the madness there couldn't be deterred, but But I think, this trend is not new, right? It's been in the air, this concept. Of course, the challenge is one of, false positive and false negative, right? So as you build these technologies, how much you cry alert, what is the trigger, right? And so, we have done a huge investment to reduce the number of false positive, because you need credibility, especially, when you predict the future. If you get it right only one every 10, then, who's going to believe you, right? In
I
our
will phone so
case,
many times.
right,
Yeah.
in our case, it's become so precise. Today, we have less than 0.05% of mistakes. And we actually guarantee that low level, to the point where if the customer, due to our mistake in prediction, is hit by an attack, we cover the cost of the attack up to 10 times the value of our annual contract. And this is backed by Munich Re, the global insurer, that basically analyze our system, and they saw that that 0.05 is actually the worst case scenario. It's actually very stable. So it's critical that these systems are engineered for minimum false positive and minimum false negative. Now, false negative is the most complicated and risky thing, is where you announce that something is not going to be problematic and then suddenly become
It is.
problematic. And so, unfortunately, you don't know what you don't know, right? And false negative is pretty much about the unknowns. But, there's still root causes that we can identify. Nowadays, we do, we deliver about 100,000 new prediction daily of future cyber attacks. And of those, less than 4% are actually false negatives. So we do miss very, very little, among the things, of course, that we can predict. So I think, policy-wise, I'm not, despite being European, I'm not a great fan of regulation in general. I think, even with the recent election, which we know the results now, probably regulation is not going to be a top of the agenda, in the US either. I think still there will be, right? The world is full of it. But I think it's more a governance of the cybersecurity program, that where teams are just fed up with this reactive approach, and they will want to do more preemptive security, proactive security. Of course, prediction is kind of the extreme. You cannot apply to everything. But I think the movement is, we don't want to be victim. We want to be in an actor mode. We want to know what's coming next, so we get ready and prepared for fighting. And I think, that's definitely one of the things that we hear as a recent customer really love BforeAI, is because they feel that now, they're not fighting back because we're not doing offensive security, but they're not in that victimhood mode where they just don't know what's going to happen next, right? And they are reacting. They like that they have a voice, that, we are creating problems for the criminals. We are reducing their ROI. Their customer are not becoming victim. Is really more empowering. It's a really good feeling for them when they go to the board and say, hey, we saved $20 million we could have had in these attacks that we blocked. So that ROI piece is actually one of the things that our customer really like. We provide a regular reporting in which we tell them this many attacks we predicted, this many we blocked, so many victims were avoided, because we have all the telemetry from the system that gives that. And that visibility they've never seen before, right? It's actually quite exciting, and eventually become one of the reasons they stick with us, because they can provide this reporting regular to the board, to their CTO, CIO, whoever they report to. And it's a feel good, right? It's knowing that you get in the morning and you have saved millions of people from fraud. Is a very good place to be.
So it sounds like there's work to be done on the policy front, depending on, regardless of your opinion on, are those good or bad. It seems that probably more preemptive, proactive security controls need to be built into NIST and CMMC and SOC and ISO and so forth that are out there. Do you think the insurance companies will help drive some of that change, or maybe they will create their own models, because they have to figure out what the risk is when they do insurance with these different entities? Are they starting to talk about preemptive, proactive insurance at all, based on what you're seeing?
Yeah, so here is a couple of thoughts, right? So first of all, I think regulation will capture also the capability of the market, right? So, we are doing something, NSF is going to fund more. And so at some point, this technology will become, more known, and so automatically people will see a value to map them, right? So that there is a kind of a natural hype cycle type of evolution there. Concurrently, I think you're right that the cyber insurance world is facing specific challenges where, yes, they try and measure and manage the risk, but I always challenge, the teams that I get in actuarials and in the insurance carrier world, because I think that the equation of the cyber risk is a pretty different one from other risks. You have a base that is definitely something you can control, right? How secure and mature a cybersecurity program at a firm is. But this is power to another component that is not controllable, that is the adversary that is going to make more and more effort to try and do the most damage possible. And so that is not a controllable and is not statistically valid either, because there is this intent of harm. It's not a natural phenomenon that you say, we can map for statistics. It's a non-statistically relevant phenomenon. So, of course, they have models, and, there have been recent research that show that the more use of tools to assess the customers are in place, the better the control of risk is. And because, there is improvement in that base, right, in that controllable. But ultimately, we know that cyber insurance is, for example, for the mid-market and definitely for the small businesses, an absolute nightmare. The cost is too high, it's too complicated to stay on top of all the audits. The requirements are becoming more and more complicated. The cost is increasing. So the conversation I have with cyber insurer is, okay, are there alternative models? So we have seen firms that already mix insurance with incident response, for example, to control for the cost of claims. So maybe you cannot remove the risk or limit the risk, but you can reduce the cost of responding. So that's an approach. We are working with certain insurance carriers to embed our product into their security product, into their cybersecurity product, by basically saying, okay, a cyber insurance with incident response, assume that there will be an attack. So it's always in that reactive approach. Let's do another type of product where we assume that 99.95% of the time, we will not see the attack because we have predicted it. And we cover with the performance guaranteed, of which I was mentioning earlier, that part where we make mistake in predicting. And so we reduce claim losses, not by reducing the cost of treating the single claim, but reducing the occurrences of the claims. And so definitely there is a lot of interest and discussion for these alternative models of more hybrid type of cyber insurance. And I think that's definitely a future of kind of a fusion between cybersecurity product and insurance product, a bit like BforeAI is with the Munich Re support, where in our case we have a cybersecurity solution that is backed by a performance guarantee supported by an insurer. I think there will be various evolution of these models, and you cannot be one or the other, because the no cyber solution will ever be 100% complete, and no cyber insurance will be cheap ever, right?
Yep.
So you need to
We only
find the
wish.
right balance. Yeah, you need to find the right balance between these two components. And so for us, for example, is definitely all about how do we partner with those insurance carrier, how we help them bring our product in a scalable way to their customers, how we help them kind of move from this mentality of, we have to have an attack and reduce the cost of the attack, to let's find ways to avoid the maximum attacks. And then, yes, there will be still some, and let's cover this little piece rather than, a more wider set of occurrences.
Fascinating. That's fascinating conversation in and of itself. Well, we have a few minutes left. I want to transition over to the personal aspect, because I think that's going to be of interest to our audience as well. You were at Dell for 18 years. You're at Quest another 3 years after that. How in the world do you stay at a company like Dell in a series? You had, I've looked at your LinkedIn profile, I think 8 or 9 different roles at least when you were at Dell.
LinkedIn probably
that
had the
kept you
limit.
energized, I assume, and talk a bit about what you did there. And then I wanted to spend a moment about the entrepreneur program that you developed.
Yeah.
That
So
was
listen,
from
Dell was my actual first official job. Before that, I was doing Formula 3 racing, professional racing,
Oh, really?
and
That's
yeah,
not on
I'm,
your
I'm
LinkedIn
definitely.
profile.
I'm there is it's at the bottom of it. It's a long, but listen, Dell was and I think still
Which
is,
team
but
did you race for?
I was in Formula 4, so obviously these are secondary kind of teams. You wouldn't know the name, but I
Uh,
was Italian Rookie of the Year, so best. I was European champion at some point.
oh, wow. So
Eventually, I ran out of money, so I had to escape Italy to avoid the
you had to go
debts
to work.
payments. And I moved to France, and that's where I joined Dell in their Italian tech supports, where they started the business for the south of Europe. And this was, as I said, my first official job. I stayed 18 years. I actually counted before leaving, I had 26 different roles. So the 9 that you see on LinkedIn is more kind of the major ones. And this was the beauty of the bigger startup in the world, as Michael Dell used to say. There was all this growth, all these opportunities. By the way, every single job was created because I suggested it, so I never took anybody else's role. That
Hmm.
was also very opportunistic entrepreneur. So you can say that I was an intrapreneur at the time, right? Coming up with new ideas, seeing new opportunities to help customers or improve the processes, and thankfully Dell had this meritocracy that created and made me always kind of move on with my skills. So as I was learning, so fantastic experience, and indeed. Toward the end of my stint, this opportunity to start to work with entrepreneurs to power them with Dell technologies and probably Dell didn't know the trouble they were letting them in by letting me work with them because of course I got the bug. And so a few years later, I left. I'll bet it wasn't a direct relationship, but I left first, and then a couple of years later started the business with Before AI. But I think the takeaway there is if you are curious, if you are eager to learn, and if you find yourself in a context that give you the capability to to spread your wings, then I think any one of us can achieve fantastic careers, right? And it's really about what do we want to achieve more than what is around us. But Dell for Entrepreneur was an exciting experience working with startups at a very early stage. The program was all about giving Dell employees a certain percentage of time to work with these startups. So it was more of a mentoring program. There was no
Hmm.
equity exchange or investment or anything like that. And what I realized at the time is that when you are an employee maybe you are in marketing, doing, product marketing, maybe you are in channel, doing channel management in those large corporations, you at any given moment, you're probably using, let's say, 50% of your capabilities because you have been in other jobs before, but you're not using every skill that you have had across your
You
career.
learned.
And
Yeah.
and there is a kind of, for me, that's kind of a waste. And so through these mentoring programs to the entrepreneurs, we would have marketing team helping entrepreneur with finance. We would have sales team helping them with speaking with partners because
Hmm.
they had done it before. And so it was sure, the entrepreneurs got a lot out of it because they got these fantastic people consulting with them for free, kind of unlimited. At a given point, we had more than 400 people involved in the program on the Dell side
Wow.
for
Hmm.
10 to 20 startup at any given moment. But you also had a huge upside of the satisfaction of the Dell employees because now they could use all these skills that normally they wouldn't use in their job. There's a lot of purpose and obviously seeing the entrepreneurs improving and growing. Some eventually left Dell and went to work with the entrepreneurs, or some left Dell and built their own company, like myself.
Like you. Yeah.
So the product was successful beyond belief. Definitely we didn't anticipate all these outcomes and collateral evolutions, but it was very exciting, especially because there was a true human to human value exchange, and very proud of what we did at the time with all the teams.
Interesting. It, some of our listeners are entrepreneurs like you. They're running their own businesses. They're not huge organizations. Others are in large organizations, maybe not the size of Dell, but sizable. Maybe some are bigger than
Mhm.
Dell. You have recommendations for them on what they can do to emulator to create a program similar to what you did at Dell if they're interested in doing the same in their organization?
Yeah, I mean, I can just say some of the things that work, and I'm not sure I would call them recommendation. Each organization is so different. I wouldn't have the make the assumption that whatever I say can be applied, right? But I think the first thing, as in any business and in any endeavor, is find your purpose. So why are you doing this? The first question is really, and for us, the answer was we want to help the entrepreneur grow, right? So
Yeah.
and then the rest kind of came later, as in, okay, we also want to help the employee, be more, happy in their job and kind of use some of their time for something more purposeful than the day by day activities. So that's number one. Number two is clear understanding of what is the scope, because this thing can get out of hand very, very quickly, because the entrepreneurs are the good ones anyway. They are capable of extracting value from where there is nothing, and so you want to make sure that you set expectation and you don't create frustration on the two sides. That because maybe the entrepreneur thinks that any company that you're working with is gonna resell your product. That maybe is not at
Mm-hmm.
all. In our case, was not the case. Maybe they can imagine that there would be some form of investment or M&A. When that is an absolute, our program was absolutely set for that. So it's very important to say at the beginning of the relationship what you will not do with the entrepreneur. So be very strict on, yes, this is what is the program, but give a contrast. What is not the program? Set expectation. This way, there will not be frustration. Right? Frustration is always a result of having higher expectation the way you can deliver it. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, find the funding, because these things are not cheap.
It's
And so
important.
that
Yeah.
you need to be creative. Is this a marketing program because it's building brand? Is this related with some form of business development? And so it's more sales related. Go figure out who is actually getting not the primary outcome, but the secondary outcome of the product, and they will have to sponsor it. If they don't sponsor it, it means that you don't have the frame of reference of your program yet correct, right? So,
Quite clear.
so one, why you do it. Second, what you don't do it, and third, how you pay for the process, because there will always be some activities, attending events, traveling to meet the entrepreneurs, supporting entrepreneurs in some marketing activities of theirs, and so on, right? So, but absolutely, if you can build an entrepreneurship innovation program within the company, it's so good. Even if it doesn't deliver any actual innovation to the company, it deliver a fantastic learning experience for the employees.
For
It
employees. Yeah.
create, despite my example and a few other, the majority of the employees that went through that program are still with Dell. So fantastic retention, because you create this purposeful, community building type activity. And last but not least, is a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun.
Well, those are some great suggestions, and I'll be interested in hearing from our listeners if you go and actually try to see if you can get a comparable program started up in your organization. So, Luigi, we could go on for another 40 minutes, but unfortunately, we don't have time. For listeners who want to get in touch with Before AI, what's the best way to do so? Your website, I assume. They can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, website very easy, before.ai. I'm super active on LinkedIn, so Luigi Lenguito and or Luigi before AI, you'll find me very easily, and I connect with everybody that connects with me, and then very happy of again this cool vendor. So before.ai/cool dash vendor, and you'll see more about it. And ultimately, our video archive. There's a lot of demos of our platform and speech, say interviews with our customers before.ai/video, and it brings you to the YouTube channel where you'll find all the content.
Yeah, that's great. Being named a Gartner Cool Vendor is a big deal, and will drive a lot of sales for you. At least you're hoping, I suspect, based on my past experiences.
We're very proud. We are very, very
Well,
proud. 4 year in, getting this achievement, and before it, we had 24 mentioned in different reports. We definitely feel that we doing something right, and we will keep doing.
You landed right on the target. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you very much.
Luigi, thanks for your time today. For our audience members, thanks for joining us for another KiteCast episode. You can find other KiteCast episodes by going to kiteworks.com/KiteCast. Thanks a bunch.